Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Voice TV. Tonight's guest is Basel Abu Faher, a classically trained cellist from Damascus, Syria, who lives currently in Brussels. He works as a composer and a musical producer. He also writes music for theater, films, and contemporary dance. And he is the author of a children's book called Saving Stella. Hello, Basel.
Hey, Maya. Hi. How are you?
Completely on the records.
Perfect.
So hi, Basil.
Hey, Maya.
Sorry for this kind of start of a talk, but you know it's the times, and that was actually my first question: is how are you living in these COVID times with probably the computer being your best friend, as for most of us?
Well, like a while back, 3 months ago, my main work computer crashed and I lost quite some files and quite some work. So 10 minutes offline is fine. I think
Yeah.
for a live video is fine. But yeah, I think like being an artist, like anybody else, I think COVID affected artists, whether they're big, well-known, established celebrities or just very underground. Like everybody got a hit. So kind of equal justice for once. Um, but yeah, no. And luckily now things are starting to pick up again.
Yeah, and I just read in the news today about the protests happening in Brussels about the COVID new COVID restrictions, tougher measures. Is it
Yeah,
happening?
there was quite some protests that took a wrong direction. Um, that's correct. Uh, you know, I think like authoritarian governments are always going to be like that, right? I mean, it's not really authoritarian, but it's just the decision I think for that they've been taking recently are very quite hard, and they're not
So what were the concrete measures that people were against?
So basically, they're really pushing as far as they can to have everyone vaxxed. So at this point, you really need a vaccination to move. And if you can still like enter a lot of public places or like cafes, cultural centers, and etc. If you're not vaxxed, but you have to have I think a negative test. I think now you have to have a negative test even if you're vaxxed. So even if you're like completely vaccinated, you still have to have a negative test. So um, yeah. Um,
So yeah, and what's your opinion on this whole pandemic crisis thing? Do you think that there's an
oh,
end to it, or do you think that we're entering a
I
new
think
age of
no, I don't think we're entering a new age. I think we're gonna have to live with it for quite some time and try to make the best out of the situation. And it's just that, for example, for me, during since 2 years, since the thing started, since the pandemic started, um, culture center has been closed. Any cultural activities has been cancelled, but yet, for example, flights were operating and air traffic was constantly working. Flights are operating, and in general, the pandemic, they say that it hit everyone, but some people really got affected more than others, and some people made obviously fortune out of it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we had the same situation here in Serbia because they at the first moment they closed all the theaters and like all the cultural centers, everything, and theaters were like the place that had to be closed because you could get COVID in theater and stuff like that. But then the first things that they opened were actually clubs and football games. And the theaters were still closed. So the whole cultural scene was not working like for months and months. I think even 7 or 8 months, everything was completely closed. But you still had,
Right.
the things that bring money were of course working. So
It's yeah, oddly, like they don't really believe that cultural brings enough money, but from the information I know, which I'm not pretty sure, 100% sure about it, but I know that Belgium cultural brings to the GDP more than the car industry, and car industry in Belgium is quite big.
yeah,
I mean
that's
GDP
good
as well.
information. Yeah.
Yeah, who really? I mean, anyways, so it's it brings a lot, but still, I think hedge funds, private equities, business minded people, they are not. You don't really see them in a theater piece of a contemporary dance show, right? It's the same. It's a pop cultural in a way, right?
Yeah.
That kind of businesses, the way they function.
Yeah. And yeah, so you're from Syria. You came in 2015, right? To
Yes,
Europe.
2015. I moved from Damascus, as you mentioned in the introduction. I was born there, grew up there, lived until 2015. So basically lived 5 years in the crisis in the war, and then moved here to Belgium at the age of 18. And yeah, where I was hosted by a Belgian family. Actually, when I first arrived, I lived in a refugee camp in north of Belgium, middle of nowhere. A lot of exciting stories to tell you.
Yeah.
And then I moved to a Belgian house family where they hosted me and the friends that I came with to Belgium. They hosted us for a year and a half until we got our papers. And that year and a half of living in Brussels for me until I got my papers actually kind of fast forwards a lot of um, my life. It really pushed me a lot. Like I kind of gained 2 years because if I was left just for a year and a half in the refugee camp, it's just actually a prison. It's not a camp. Well, camp. It's actually really a prison with a lot of rules and. Um, but yeah, I'll let you lead the conversation and we see where we go.
Yeah, I first wanted to show this video which I found, which is very short, but it's a video that was made about you and your work, and maybe we can first see the video and then we can talk more about this topic.
Yes.
You can say
when I
something
decided
about.
to leave, I wasn't sad or scared. I was so happy. I was like, okay, now this is behind and I'm now going somewhere else. Hi, my name is Basel Abu Fakhr. I'm from Syria, Damascus, Syria. I play cello for now 13 years. I live in Brussels for a couple of years. After I came here, I arrived here with a few friends and we lived in a refugee camp for 1 month and then we moved to a Belgian family. And actually I have a dog which is from Syria. I have her Stella for 7 years now. And my father sent Stella with a taxi driver to Beirut from Damascus. And then I had Stella after like 6 months of moving to Belgium. It was a great moment to see her again, but also lots of responsibilities beside lots of other problems to deal with, like papers and getting a job and finding an apartment and trying to keep the music on. Yeah, when I play the cello, I feel relaxed, maybe like happy. satisfied. Well, I'm 21 years old. Maybe I might look older. If I shave, it's gonna be younger. Don't put this in. I'm young, and when I decided to leave, I wasn't sad or scared. I was so happy. I was like, okay, now this is behind, and I'm now going somewhere else. I'm starting something I had to start lots of years before, but I couldn't because of the whole situation in Syria. I like Brussels because it's got a very open people living in the city itself. Like, I got help from a lot of people from the family I lived with for 1 year for free. You can do a lot as an artist because it has like really different diverse people and events and concerts and stages and museums, lots of stuff going around. Yeah, for me, like I found myself here as part of the city, or like in a way part of the city, and then I think, yeah, it's for me more home here now than I feel towards my country, which is maybe wrong, but I'm fine with it.
Hey.
When was this filmed?
I think like 4 years ago.
4 years ago, yeah.
So a lot changed.
Yeah. So yeah. Do you still feel like Brussels is your home more than Damascus?
I feel like I made it home. The thing is, like, that video kind of shows the first year. I can maybe perhaps speak on behalf of many people who migrated from my country or neighboring countries. So the first year or 2 years when you move somewhere new, I think when you're young and you're my age, you're just excited and you think, we heard a lot about Europe, we heard a lot about human rights, about equality. You're coming from a war zone. They will, give you a hug. You will walk in. You're good. You're gonna study. You're gonna get a job. Everything's gonna be fine. So and you're just. Our country's infrastructure is very also progressed and evolved in a way, but still, like, here everything was quite different and exciting. And then 2 years down the line, and everything starts hitting you in the face. You're like, maybe I should have just stayed back home.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people ask me, so do you like it here in Brussels? Like, when I first meet someone, always ask me, where are you from? I say, from Syria. And the first question they ask, do you like it? And I don't know. Do you like it? You tell me how's your life? How much money you're making? Like, you're Belgian. You're educated with a master and degrees, a PhD degrees. How are you doing? It's just like, that's always my answer.
But when you did you want to leave Damascus earlier? Did you have like a vision to go to Europe earlier, or did you do it because of the war? And how did your trip look like when you left Syria? Was it difficult to come to Brussels? Was it difficult with the papers? And of course, you mentioned the refugee camps, and you can maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was lucky. I was born in a bit more progressive family than other families in Syria. My mom is a communist, so she was very, she was always she always realized that there's something's going to happen to this country and to the whole Arab world, and we should get out of here as soon as we could. But obviously it was quite difficult. So since I was a little kid, this discussion was running around the room in my house, was we should leave, we should go here, we should go there. My mom was always telling us, you can travel, you can become who you want to be, you can, get good education, equality, respect, democracy. Not everything she mentioned actually turned out to be true, but a lot of it. So that was a discussion since I was a little kid, and then the war started, and then we just tried to leave as soon as we could. Unfortunately, all my family is separated because we thought that if we come to Europe, because it's European Union, it turns out it's not really a union after living here for 5 years. Schengen, all these laws, what we thought are, the same everywhere. So we thought, like, if we all end up in different countries, we can always just see each other. But obviously down the line, down the road, we realized that was a big mistake. So now we're just separated. My mom lives in Ireland. My sister lives in Germany. So I just left Syria with friends to Beirut, took an airplane to Turkey, and then a rubber boat to Greece. And then why did I decide to come to Belgium? It's because I knew someone who knew this family that I was hosted by. Actually, his name is Frederick Smits. He's he at the time he used to work for UNHCR. I'm not sure if he's still working for them. Also, he helped me a lot here in Belgium the first 6-7 months, just like teaching me what to do, where to go, how to move on and find a new life. But so yeah, that's the reason why I came to Brussels. That's how I ended up in Brussels. And there's actually a lot I can tell you about the travel. So again, when I meet somebody here in Brussels, a new person, and they are from Syria, a lot of the questions are, so how was your travel?
Yeah.
And to me, living 5 years in a war, and I've like lost some friends, I lost some family members. There was just, my house was on the outskirts of Damascus, so it was kind of the front line with whatever you want to call them, or whatever the media calls them, rebels, Free Army. I don't know who they are anymore. There are a lot of them. So we were just on the front line. So there was a lot of action happening. But, when you're living it, when you're in the middle of it, you just accept it, you embrace it, you live with it, you move on, you live your day, and you live by the day. So people ask me, how was Syria? Syria was fine. It's just, it's a war. What do you expect from a war? But then once you leave Syria, that's when the identity crisis started, because you're like, am I treated even like a human being anymore? Literally in Turkey, in Erbil, where it was like the hub for exporting refugees to Greece and to Europe, you would walk in the streets and people are just shouting names of countries like Sweden. Hey, you want to come to Sweden? This is my price. This is the route I'll give you. It was just like it was a mafia run organization, well organized. Everything was on point, which is really scary. I paid 8,000 euros to get to here. I was with a group of 5, and my sister, she left during the same time with her husband and his family. So they were a group, I think, of 7. Not sure if it's 7 or 8, but anyways, my point is that the sum of the money we all paid as one family, it was about 90,000 euros
to come to Europe.
And yeah, and that's considered, a good price. Millions of refugees or people who moved here, they paid a lot of this money. So do the math. Where's this money going? Governments. I mean, when I was in crossing on the way, I was crossing the borders. I don't remember where. I think Serbia, or I forgot exactly the country, but
we were a crossing point for the refugees.
Yeah,
most of them were crossing. They didn't want to stay here because we're non-EU, but we were a crossing point.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly where this thing happened, which I'll tell you about. But anyways, so we were walking in between the mountains, and there was just little houses, and the owners of the houses, people who live there, they're outside with power sockets, like power sockets connected to each other, like 10 of them, and you can charge your phone for 20 euros for like 10 minutes. Which to me on the spot, I was just like, are you serious? I need to charge my phone to know where I'm going, but you're asking me for 20 euros. That was so everyone benefited from the crisis, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which also was like kind of scary. And then yeah, I arrived to Belgium. We did the I did the fingerprints to all with my friends on the same day, same exact moment. But two of my friends were Christians. One was Sunni, and me and another friend, we were Druze. For you who don't know what Druze is, it's a religion, part of Islam, huge, like a very small minority. I think 0. Where something of it's very, very small. We live in the mountains between Lebanon and south of Syria, and close to Palestine. There's mountains called the mountains of Sheikh, Jebel Sheikh. So Jebel Sheikh. We live there, and it's we have our holy book. It's a mix between Bible and Quran, and we have, you have to be born a Druze. You only can marry to a Druze, and etc. Anyways, I don't believe, I'm not a religious person, but so back to the point. My friends who were Christians who did the fingerprint, they got their papers 5 months after the fingerprints, and they only had to go through one investigation interview. I did 3. My Sunni friend did 2, and it took him a year. My papers took a year and a half to come through, which tells you enough. And obviously, I'm not complaining because I'm a Syrian. I got to get my papers really easily, because if you were Afghani or Iraqi, it's even harder. I don't think they're giving Afghani people any more papers. Anyway, yeah, it's not anymore about just that region. You have Belarus in huge crisis for a long time. You have Ukraine. You have a lot of problems happening, but they just don't accept them because this is not the time to focus on that crisis. It's a time to focus on the Arab Spring and the dictatorship of the Arabs. So anyways, we did the fingerprints. We were sent to a camp on the same day, which was really far from anything. Basically, we had to take a half an hour. We had to walk 20 to 25 minutes from the camp to the first bus stop, and then take a bus for about 45 minutes to get this small town that was next to us. So it was actually an old military base, and it's actually they opened about 3-4 days before we arrived, because there was this crisis, right? We were so many coming to Europe, so they couldn't just find where to put us. So they just put us in this old military camp. The heating wasn't working when I was there. I don't know if they fixed it after. For example, you're not allowed to leave. You have to write a paper, sign it, say where you're leaving, why. And if you leave the camp, you can only go back before 10 p.m. So if you're late, you're not allowed to enter. And the rooms were I really hated that. The rooms were, I think, like 30 square meters each room, and you just have a bed and a little metal closet next to it, and everybody's in the same room, shared toilets and bathrooms, no locks for the rooms. Was really not the problem, but the problem is that you cannot have, you cannot put Sunni, Shia, Alawi, Druze, Christian, all of this big mess, right, into one space, open, and ask us to live together. I mean, we left the country because we cannot live together anymore. And then you're expecting just from us to just live and chat and have fun for 1-2 years, where we're locked in this place, fixed hours for food, this almost the same food every day, and you're queuing outside in the rain and the cold until you can enter and take your food and leave. So things were really that 1 month and a half I lived in the camp was worse than 5 years of war in Syria. That was really yeah, rock and roll.
Yeah, and you so then Europe was not so much like a country that you imagined.
No, the first thing when I arrived in South Station of Brussels, I mean, people who know South Station of Brussels, they will know what I'm talking about. I was I look around and I'm like, what am I doing here? I should go back. It's just the amount of homeless people that came up to me just asking, begging for money, and I'm like, are you serious? This is the thing. Like now in Syria, even after 12 years of the crisis, you walk in the streets and you don't see homeless people. Um, it's not that because of the government is taking care of them. No, just because the people are, we host each other. Um, I mean,
Different culture.
yeah, well, obviously, if you're Assad supporter and he is a rebel, then they're not gonna host each other. Probably you're gonna have problem. But you know, you get my point. In the same place, whether it's the regime or um, not the regime, you know, you can still um, be hosted. Anyway, so yeah, I was really shocked by all of this. Very disappointed, and yeah, you just have to live with it.
Yeah, and tell me one thing. Did you at some point during all these years you've been living in Europe think of going back to Syria? And did you ever just go back to visit or not?
I don't think I will ever go back. I it's like kind of a becoming more and more of a blackout in my life. I just kind of shift deleted the whole 18 years of my life there for many reasons. The main one is this, that if you really want to move on and start a new life, you cannot just be how to say, caught um, with your past. And the thing is, like, arguably, you know, some people will say, well, I moved to from Italy to I don't know, Holland, and studied there and I stayed there. Sure, but it's not that knowing that your country is just vanished, everybody you know has left to a different place, and there's just no more connection. And people who still live there, you just you don't connect with anymore. um, it's a different life, it's a different, everything is different. And people who still live in your hometown, they're under pressure, they are, you know, so like it's kind of really, you kind of unplugged and started a new, you unplugged the computer and throw it and you bought a new one and you started a new frame where so
Can
no,
you?
I cannot go back for many reasons. And I also do, I'm kind of, yeah, terrified. It's the situation there is horrible.
Yeah,
um it's you know, now in the media they say the war is over, but it's not. The war just started, in my opinion. What do you do after 12 years of mayhem in a country? You go in a post civil war, which means no infrastructure, no, you run out of supplies. There's no more food, there's no more electricity, there's no gas, there's no heating. Syria is not that hot because people think it's a desert, but it's not. We have mountains, we've got waterfalls, it's beautiful. Recommended for vacations after 34 years from now. um, so yeah, it's a chaos. It's absolute mayhem there now. It's just um,
yeah,
and the thing is, people who are still living there, they just can't leave anymore because the financial situation is really wrecked and they can barely find food. But like, for example, Denmark was sending people back because, hey, politically it's over. Assad
yeah,
won the war. Um, but yeah, it's not over for sure. It's just started, I think. It's like Iraq. It's like Afghanistan, right?
yeah. Never ending story.
And as long as you can make, as long as we have oil, as long as we are in a very strategical, very strategically positioned in the region, neighboring Israel and Saudi Arabia, Turkey, I guess the perfect spot to have a war and chaos there. Why would you fix it, right? If you're really into uh weapon industries and all it's perfect. So
Yeah,
it's gonna stay like this, in my opinion.
for a while.
Hmm.
And how did you decide to write a children's book? I was very intrigued about the story of your dog, that you managed to bring your dog also from Syria, and you wrote the book called Saying Stella: Dog's Dramatic Escape from War. How did you decide to do this, and what is Stella's story? Stella is probably somewhere near you now.
Yeah, she's in the living room actually, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Well, I was contacted by Deborah Blumenthal. She's a author and a journalist in New York. She found out about the story. She contacted me and she proposed the idea to write the book together, and we did. We pitched it to Bloomsbury Publishing, and they accepted the pitch. And then eventually, it all worked out and turned out to be a children's book. So, and we had to find an illustrator for the book. Nadine Kadan, who lives in London. She's wonderful. She did a great job also, and actually Deborah, the co-author, and Bloomsbury, the publishing, they made sure that the illustrator is from Syria to have the most realistic pictures they could um, illustrate. So yeah, I actually, when I moved here, I stayed with the Belgian family, and my dog was left back home with my dad. He's not the most dog person, let's put it this way. Um, so he was like, "Hey, I can't barely take care of myself. I don't know what to do with this dog." So I asked Johannes van der Meulen, who hosted me, to go to Beirut, take a flight to Beirut, pick Stella up, and my dad sent Stella with a driver to Beirut. It sounds simple. It wasn't. It was a lot complicated. But yeah, funny enough, a dog from Syria could take a flight straight to Brussels, but still, me, I have to go in a rubber boat to get here.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And for me, it was really nice to see this book, because I think it's also important for young children in Belgium
Exactly. So
to read the story, and to read the story about people who came,
yeah,
to Europe.
I didn't make it clear. So the book is about explaining to children about the war in Syria, but obviously you want to have a nice ending, a happy ending. So the happy end is that Stella arrived, and she was left there alone. She was scared, and then I managed to get her here, and then she was happy and she's safe. And so it's a children book, aged between 6 and 12. It's in English. We're trying to find publishers in other languages that would be interested in translating it and publishing it. But for now, it's only in English.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about it being a very interesting cartoon for children, like an animation.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. It's a very heroic story, so it's a lot of meaning to it.
And so now I would like to talk a little bit about your music, things that you do. You play the cello. You do a lot of. You have your own. I can't say band, but Linear Minds is your label, right?
Yeah. It's so I started playing the cello when I was a little kid, and I grew up playing it. Made 2 albums in contemporary classical / jazz fusion. Was quite confusing, still is. And then I think since about 2 years, I just stopped playing actually, and I got more into writing music, and whether it's atmospheric sound design, ambient, or even working with rock band producers, film score composers. Basically, yeah, actually, I was just like throwing myself into anything to learn, because I didn't get the chance to go to a school, music production school, but I was throwing myself into anything that I got my hands on and just trying to pretend that I know what I'm doing just to get the job, and then figuring out after. And then I realized that what I really wanted to do is just produce and write music and work with other artists, and I managed to do that. I have written a couple of albums after that, in post-rock, electronica, and now working on a new one, which is gonna be maybe soon released. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also, when I was listening to your music and Googling some of your videos, I saw this really interesting video that I would like to play. And it's called The Beer Infused with Sound, Deep End, using music in a very experimental way. So maybe we can first see the video and then we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Great.
So the big inspiration for this beer is an album by Mort Garson called Plantasia, which was produced to play back to his plants, see if that has some effect on the growth and whatnot. We love to see if we could recreate that in the brewery environment. So yeah, David and I in production both share a love for ambient electronica, and once you work here in production enough, you start to hear the sounds around the brewery that kind of have a nice cadence to it. So we had Bustle come around, take some samples around the brewery, made a whole album out of these tracks, or these samples.
To stand out, you have to make your own sound, create your own character. Every sound that I used in it is never used anywhere else. So there is no really a guideline to follow. Actually, I had to bring a lot of microphones to the brewery. Yeah, we just had fun for a full day, just knocking on things, turning machines on and off, and it was really crazy to just hear how things sound differently. I have about 200 or 300 samples from Brussels Beer Project. I try to keep it very musical at the beginning. Yeah, it creates this curiosity like of, okay, how is that possible that it's been created out of sounds from a brewery? It's not rocket science, it's just fun.
So we always listen to these stories of music influencing wine, influencing water, influencing plant. Will be the perfect opportunity to infuse it in the beer and see the influence of it in the final result. We grabbed a big speaker with a big bass on it that we infused in the fermenter, and it was actually so cool, like to see the effect of the bass into the liquid itself. You just see the movement of the beer around the speaker. Really do believe he affected the fermentation dynamics of the beer. It might affect the taste, and I'm really curious to see what's your reaction to the beer itself and to the album as well.
It was really interesting to see like what music can influence, like also, how you can use music to influence things like, public gatherings, collective gatherings, rituals, protests, and the other way around also, that the music can influence your soul, it can influence a plant, and it is very so. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, exactly. It's I think so. When the guys reached out to me first from Brussels Beer Project, I was really surprised that can we actually do such thing. It sounded like a great idea, a great project. It took a year and a half to be done. Basically, Brussels Beer Project is a brewery based in Brussels, experimental brewery, and they climbed their way up really quickly. They are becoming one of the major breweries in the beer country, Belgium. And the idea is to make an album out of the sounds from that brewery, a sound design based album, and then infuse a speaker in a tank in the fermenter and blast it for throughout the fermentation period, because the sound waves will move the hops, and then the hops are gonna react differently to a different frequency, a different track each time. And the beer is going to be infused. buy the music. And it was like a only 6,000 can they made. I think it's sold out already, but you can still listen to the music, to the album. It's on Spotify or iTunes or any platform you are using. Yeah, it was really cool. It was really nice. And actually, I tried a prototype, which was before the music, and one after, and it did actually change it. It did change the taste and the body of the beer.
So, what do you think that music can influence except beer?
I think maybe I found a gap in the business. I can try to experiment with stuff now. But I think it's like sound in general, music and sound, and it's very effective. Like there are certain sounds that you hear now and you immediately picture in your mind the brand or the company, or like McDonald's, right? You can now immediately hear it, or cannot think of something else now, but so it's very powerful. Music and sound are very powerful. You kind of create a picture, you can influence feelings and especially also with ambient music and classical music. Actually, any kind of music. It's very effective on the emotion. So you can sometimes tell a lot with just an instrumental track without having lyrics. And actually, a lot of my friends always tell me that my music is very cinematic. It's most of it is instrumental, but I think they are using the wrong terminology. What they're trying to say is that it can make you see, can make you feel different things. You kind of have your own story, which is, I think it's a nice feedback of them.
So did you have done some movies and you have also done the music for a documentary film called Not Just Another Party about the DiEM25.
Exactly.
And I wanted to ask you how did you decide to become a member of DiEM? How did you get in touch with the movement? Why? And does DiEM in a way give you a sense of maybe changing the society and Europe that you came to? And does it give you like some kind of hope? And how did you combine it together with your work during the work on this film?
All right. So I was reached. So I know David, who works with you, and I think it was in 2016. So I was just very new in Brussels. I still haven't kind of wrapped my head around the politics of Europe, of Belgium, how the constitution is, how the institutions, the organizations, all of that is working. Had a lot of questions, and I was trying to figure it out and kind of read about it and follow and ask questions. I met David in a little event here in Brussels. I forgot actually what it was about, but it's kind of the subject was related to what DiEM is working in, and yeah, from there on I joined, and if as you ask me what I think of if DiEM is gonna what you're trying to do is gonna change, what was the question again?
Yeah, well, do you think that is DiEM for you a movement that gives you hope that things in this society can change, and the things you were also faced with when you came to Europe, and of course all of the problems that Europe has currently?
Yes, for sure. I think what DiEM's trying to do is very important nowadays. We need a voice. We need more awareness. We need progression. We need the thing is that I have a lot of respect for what DM and all the volunteers are doing, basically, because I've met enough ignorant people here, my age, who ask me questions that are surprising, such as who was first, Palestine or Israel? Now, I'm not asking everybody in the world to know every single problem in the world, but there are things that you, I think, should know, especially when you're living in this time and this era and this place. And when I, from what I've been following and following from GM and seeing the effort and the work, it's very nice. It's satisfying. It feels like somebody's there trying to raise awareness and change things fundamentally. My work with GM for the documentary, I'm still very proud of it. I think very happy that I got the opportunity to do it, because I'm always kind of shouting about, hey, nobody's trying to make something or change anything, and you should know more about what's going on in the world, etc. And then at some point I felt I was not doing anything about it either. So that was kind of an opportunity to feel rewarded, self-fulfillment.
Yeah, to do something. We can maybe see a short insert from the movie with your music.
The election of Mera25 opened many new ways for the politics of the movement and the party to be advanced. One of these is through the foundation of a research institute associated with the party. Its name, META, the Center for Post-Capitalist Civilization.
Είναι ένα διεθνικό κέντρο, περιλαμβάνει, ουσιαστικά απευθύνεται σε όλη την Ευρώπη και όχι μόνο. Μέλη του Διοικητικού μας Συμβουλίου ανήκουν στο DM, αλλά επίσης ανήκουν και στην Προοδευτική Διεθνή. Στόχος μας είναι η μελέτη συνολικά του φαινομένου του μετακαπιταλισμού. Ως εκ τούτου, εκ των πραγμάτων, επειδή ο μετακαπιταλισμός αφορά όλη την υδρόγειο, είναι ένα διεθνικό κέντρο και εκεί ελπίζουμε ότι θα μπορέσουμε με πρωτοποριακό τρόπο να μελετήσουμε καταρχάς και μετά να αντιμετωπίσουμε τον καπιταλισμό. Σε αντίθεση με τα κλασικά, ιδρύματα των άλλων κομμάτων, αυτό το ίδρυμα θα εστιάσει σε κάτι πολύ πρωτότυπο, στον πολιτισμό, στην τέχνη, στις νέες μορφές τέχνης, στην ανάπτυξη των τεχνών, αλλά και στον πολιτισμό σαν ένα τρόπο ζωής.
If there's one thing that we've learned from our trip to Greece, it's that change is possible when people do not abandon hope. This was the story of those who got Mera25 elected by refusing against all odds to accept misery as the standard for their country. It is the story of a group of people who brought together their passion and their skills and channeled them towards something constructive, who dare to believe that alternatives are still possible, even in Greece, especially in Greece. When DiEM25 started establishing parties across Europe, it did so with the promise that each time an electoral wing was created, it would not be just another political party. It would be a tool for people across the continent to stand for what they believe in and replace a system and a set of politicians that have abandoned them. Those we met on our visit showed us not only that that promise is kept in Greece, but that if DiEM25 has any chance of saving Europe from itself, this is it.
Yeah, so we just realized that this version was not subbed, but in the chat there will be the link for the whole movie with subs. So sorry for that. But yeah, what you were saying, that I think that today we hear a lot that young people completely lost any kind of sense of believing in any kind of ideology and movement and political party entering the parliament and parliamentary democracy and changes. And then I think that with Diem, there's a space that opened with the movement, and also with Mera becoming electoral wings, political parties that first happened in Greece and got into the parliament, now in Germany, we hope in Italy soon, and in other countries. So do you believe in parliamentary democracy, and do you believe by being elected in parliament we can actually change some things in the future, from your perspective as a young person, you know?
I do think it can make a change, that's for sure. And I do think it's important. And but before we ask these questions, I think we should focus on preparing, educate young people about making the right decision. I was confronted with this argument the other day with a friend my age. I threw a joke. I was like, "Hey, that's why you should vote left." And he was like, "I just don't vote at all because they are all, there's nothing, I just don't vote." And I asked him, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes, I'm serious. I just don't vote." So we got an argument. Why don't you vote? And it's just we should just focus more on the bringing up the education to a level where we can actually make a change. But for example, also it's democracy or parliamentary and whatnot. It's just something that maybe doesn't work for us here. Maybe it worked at some time. Maybe it's not going to work anymore. I'll give you an example. In Afghanistan, America has been always trying to oppose democracy their way, right? So bringing this product into this country and be like, we're going to do it this way. It's not working. It has been working for 30 years. This is going to sound a bit terrible, but I'm just glad that just America is now finally out. Yeah, it's too bad that Taliban took over, but just maybe we should let them figure it out their way. It can even get worse. It can become even a more of a healthy situation there. But at some point, it's gonna rise and it's gonna work out. Maybe they're gonna figure out something that we still don't know, whether it's new liberal or whether it's a democracy or any other. We don't know, right? It's just so. For me, as a young person, here right now at this very moment, yes, I think it's important. And it actually can make a change. But I think it's kind of relates to the country that you're in and to the circumstances and the environment that you're in.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So what are the next things that you're going to work on, and do you plan on doing something for Diem in the future, maybe?
I would love
Some kind
to.
of a project.
If there is an opportunity, maybe I would love to, of course. For now, there's a new piece is gonna come out soon with a music video, and it's just kind of a whole art project, quite political. The music, the lyrics, the picture. It's under Linear Minds. It's called Angel Dust. So hopefully soon we'll manage to finish it. It's just, when you're an independent artist, there's a lot going on that you have to figure out by yourself. And also my new album I've been working on for a year, but I would love to do some more work with Diem on any art projects. That would be great.
Yeah, well, that's what Voice does. It in a way tries to see how art and politics can work together, and make the arts a little bit more political, and make the politics in a way a little bit more artistic.
Exactly.
So yeah, I also hope we will.
But for example, like I think for me, art, it's the best way to write history. I think like history can always get manipulated one way or another, depending on who's writing it, and you never can go back in time and actually see what was going on the ground. I'm really looking forward to 60 years from now to see what is the war in Syria is about. You know, how is it going to be wrapped up in the history books? But art is always going to stay the same, explain the same point, like, you know, artists are always going to try to, you know, there's no way you can change it. It's out there. And especially nowadays, there are two types of arts: capitalist art and underground art, and it's becoming more and more that you have to be privileged to make art, because now everything is expensive to make art. I mean, if you want to learn how to play the piano, you need to get a good piano, right? You just cannot become that good if you don't have the tools for it. You never hear of a breakthrough artist from Iraq or Syria, or you know, it's usually someone who got the chance to put time and effort, enough time and effort, to create originality and create
yeah, and then it's a really great thing to close with, is that, you know, art is going to write history, and at the end we will see the works of art as a reflection of the period we lived in.
Exactly, for sure, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
So thank you so much, Basil, for being our guest tonight at
Thank
Voice.
you.
And before we will listen and also see your video, Linear Minds Called Vector. We will see the whole video at the end of this show. But before that, and before I say goodbye, I would just like to tell people that it would be great if they joined our panel tomorrow, our open CC meeting or live stream meeting, where we will discuss the refugee crisis, and we will honor also our dear friend and colleague that we sadly lost, Rosemary Batchelor. So see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the live stream. And thank you again, Basil, for being our guest tonight.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks.